Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ocean Rock Stars podcast with your host, Tom Nemat. Happy to have you here today. We actually have a really wonderful guest here, Taryn Mangan. She's a CADAC 2, that's a certified addiction counselor. And today we want to go over the topics of codependency, love addiction, body dysmorphia, guilt, shame, depression, anxiety, self-worth, and self-esteem. In addition to self-harm and suicidal ideation, really with a focus being on codependency, body dysmorphia, and dealing with anxiety and things on a day-to-day basis. Before we get into the topics, I really wanted to get to know you a little bit more, have the audience get to know you a little bit more, and specifically, I always ask this question, but what motivated you to become an addiction counselor and help people dealing with addiction and mental health issues?
Yeah, so my story is a little different than other people because I don't deal with it directly, but indirectly, addiction has impacted my entire life since the moment I was born. At 6 months old, my mom started a drug and alcohol, rehabilitation center for women, and I was on her hip, and I was at AA meetings my whole life, and I knew about the 12 steps before I knew how to read and write. So I've been in this field really my whole life, but I wasn't really impacted by it because my mom was sober, my dad was sober. I only knew the beauty and people recovering. I didn't really have my experience with it until later. So that was not the goal, was to work in treatment. That was not I'm going to follow in the footsteps and do these things. The way that I got there was a hard road to get to where I'm at today, to be honest with you. But yeah, I grew up here. My mom worked in treatment. I went to school here, went to a few different school districts. But I experienced anxiety and depression at a very young age, 6 and 7 years old, not wanting to, my parents to leave when I went to school. Didn't really socially interact with kids very well.
Right.
Always had something inside of me that felt not right, and I never was able to put my words to it. And now I know that was anxiety and depression from a really young age, and I don't know where it came from, and but it was always there. And then when I got into high school, things got really hard for me. I was body checking every day, very insecure about who I was as a person, what I looked like, how people perceived me, and as a result, I was not very good at school. I sucked at school because I was so consumed with fear of talking, fear of raising my hand, not wanting to spend time with other kids. Never felt right in that way. I was kind of the goofy class clown. Didn't really have a whole bunch of friends, but everyone kind of knew me. And yeah, my mom knew up really early on that something was wrong too. Tried to get me to talk to professionals. I refused. I don't like talking to people. I don't like to be in therapy. I don't want to tell anybody how I'm feeling. My mom and dad are sober. I, go through high school. I see this guy that I'm interested in. He's interested in me. He's got all the wrong things about him. He's cheated on every girlfriend. He's a bad boy. He has tattoos at freaking 17 years old, and there I was just secretly, because I was always grounded because I wasn't doing good in school.
Right.
Would sneak out and go see this person, and it would feel like this person wanted me because I felt unwanted, because I felt so insecure. I really dove deep, and then all of my confidence came from really that person. And it was really messy. He was abusive right away, physically abusive right off the bat. He went to jail for drug trafficking charges. All of this is a secret. Yes, he's a little older.
Right.
Yeah, he goes to this place, it's juvenile hall or whatever.
Right.
I get pregnant.
Wow.
I'm 16 years old, just turned 16. I had to go get an abortion, but my mom doesn't think I'm leaving the house. She certainly doesn't think I'm having sex.
Right.
She's very strict, so I had to do that all by myself. I figured out a way to get dropped off close enough to Planned Parenthood to kind of walk across the street and go do this, and I'm terrified, and I don't know how to go to the doctor alone, let alone get an abortion alone.
Right.
He's in jail. I'm writing him from jail a letter of like, I miss you, I love you,
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, please help me. You know, I have no one to talk to. Can't tell anybody at school about it. Certainly can't tell my parents about it. He gets out of jail. He gets me pregnant again.
Wow.
He's very abusive. I have to go again to get an abortion, talk to the same people, and do the walk of shame again. I'm 16 and a half years old. At the time...
Same year?
Yes, this was like maybe 2 months after.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anything, but this person makes me feel good. And when I'm with this person, I feel not insecure, even though he's abusing me, even though he's the wrong guy, even though all of it, I liked the pain of it. I liked to feel,
you were feeling
bad.
something.
I was feeling something.
Right.
And so I get another abortion, and you know, these are the people who did the first one, and it was extremely traumatizing, and they're not nice to you. You know, they're like, "What are you doing?" And then they give me like an IUD, and then I get an STD, which then reaches. So now I know he's cheating on me. You know, something's happening. He's a really bad guy. And I because I had the IUD, it almost killed me because it spreads up. Big emergency surgery, again, alone, you know, no family, no friends, no
one
nothing.
knew about it?
No one knows about anything I'm doing. I'm
just hiding all of this.
Hiding everything. I lied about everything. You know, I was coming home, being the perfect daughter, making, you know, other than my grades, was grounded every day. So for all she knew, I'm not leaving the house.
You're in your room.
Yeah, but I did community service at the soup kitchen. So what I would do is I'd go to the soup kitchen. Right across the street was Planned Parenthood, and I had to go to these appointments. I feel like the worst person in the world at this point. And I'm so young, and I shouldn't feel like the worst person in the world, but I do. And a lot of young girls are dealing with the same thing right now because we don't know. Like, we just know that this person wants to do this thing, and, you know, babies are made that way. But, yeah, that was what happened that really spiraled me into the panic attacks, the fear of going outside, the hating myself, the self-harm, started self-harming because I felt like a really bad person. So, yeah, that's where it all really, that was the first real, like, traumatic thing that happened to me where I knew, like, something was wrong, but I didn't want to fix it because I was in denial to everyone around me. So how do you tell anybody?
Right.
So I stay with this person. Meanwhile, this person's in my life for another 10 years.
Oh my God.
So this doesn't just go away.
Right.
This is how it started. This is how the relationship begins. And that's why I put an emphasis on that, because
despite all that, you're still in the relationship.
And that's all I'm thinking about. That's my focus. My focus is not
yourself, not what am I going to do.
Myself was last on the list for so long. It was, what does my mom want? What does my dad want? What does this guy want? What do my teachers want? I never had a sense of self, like of what do I want? What do I deserve? I really had a sense of self-hatred and a lot of suicidal ideations at this point.
This is still when you're in your teens, right?
Yeah.
Late teens.
Then around like 17, my dad starts getting high. And I know he's getting high because he's a different person. So I've got this guy and I've got this guy, my dad, and I've got this guy I'm dating. Neither one of them are safe.
Right.
I don't know how to talk to anybody about any of this. My dad, I know he's getting high. My mom and dad leave they both are like about to get a divorce. They leave. It's just me and my grandma and my brother at the house. And that's when the abuse got even worse from my ex-partner. And he'd steal my car, you know, hit me, beat me up. My friends are starting to see it because they're over at the house. Everyone's like, what are you doing? Like, this is like, how could you be with someone like this? And I'm like, I don't know how to get out. I wouldn't want to get out. I was happy, like, as far as I'm concerned. Right. And that's where I know now what it was this love addiction, this anxious attachment style, this self-harming, codependency. It was, he helped with my body dysmorphia. It made me feel better. And I see a lot of women doing the exact same thing as me. And they're like, you know, everyone judges me and says, why are you still with this person? And I'm like, I get it. Like, I did it for a very long time. So now it's like a gift I have of being able to, sit with these people. But at the time it was, it was a defense mechanism of, if I don't do all of these things and be with this person, I feel like I want to die if he's not with me.
Right.
I want to be around you 24/7, like a drug.
No matter how bad the pain was, the positive feeling that you were getting was actually greater. So that was pushing you to hold on to it rather than listen to everyone around you who was telling you, get the hell out of this situation, right?
Just like a drug addict
Right.
with drugs.
Well, I mean, and you said you didn't have addiction issues in terms of drug and alcohol addiction, right? But you had the mental health issues, and then the eating disorder issues, right? And so, and even with the addiction, I mean, you might not have had the drug and alcohol addiction, but you had other addictions, right?
Yeah.
So these things are interesting how they play out. Not everybody ultimately goes to drink or use drugs, but they use other things to help cope with what they're dealing with. And you ended up using this relationship and the feeling that, regardless of how bad it was, and it just made you want to continue. And so now you're kind of talking about, okay, now your dad relapsed and, you have these two male figures who you're looking up to and they're letting you down. And then obviously your mom's going through it. There's a divorce. There's all kinds of things happening. And you're this young 16, 17, 18-year-old who really doesn't know how to navigate through this terrain, right? Like you just, you're not listening to your friends. You're not listening to people around you. You're not seeking therapy. You're not having an open and honest communication with your mom who, if you did, would be figuring out how to help you because you're probably going out of your way to keep her from.
I don't want help.
Right?
Yeah.
So then what happened?
So then they had to figure out what to do with us kids because they're going through it. They've been married for 25 years and we're splitting up as a house. And my dad moves to this, he bought a gold mining town in Kern County and was like, baby, I got a gold mine in town. We used to gold mine together. And, he's a really fun guy, my hero.
Right.
My dad is my hero through all of this. He's my favorite person. And that's what we used to do together. So I thought, well, maybe things will get better. Again, backstory to dad. My mom works. My dad's at home with me. He's loving. He's kind. He tells me I'm beautiful. He tells me I'm worthy. He tells me I'm special. He's the best dad in the world. Takes me to school, picks me up, makes me lunch, makes me dinner, does everything that you're supposed to do as a dad. And he was a great dad. And he wasn't in the past because he was getting high. So this was his real redemption on being a father, and he was amazing at it. But what I was dealing with, my anxiety and depression, he really helped me with it. Of all the people who really got it, he got it. He understood because he felt the same way as a kid. So we really resonated. Although I was lying about the specifics, he knew I was
Something was
struggling.
going on.
Yeah. So when he's out of the picture, really, because he moves away, my mom moves away, they get me a house in Venice.
Okay.
I live there with the guy.
Oh, okay.
So it's me and him.
They don't know that.
They do.
They do. At that point, okay.
Yeah. So he, we had a facade.
They didn't know about what was actually happening behind the scenes. The
Yes.
presentation was, hey, this is a loving relationship, and
Yes.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with domestic violence, that's usually typically what happens is that the couple, shows themselves as, I'm a loving boyfriend, I'm happy girlfriend, everything's okay. It's a big show. And then behind closed doors is where the scary things happen. That's why love addiction is a scary thing, because it's something that you can't tell. You can tell if someone's high.
Right.
But you can't tell if someone's struggling in an abusive relationship,
Right.
because it happens
Behind
the scenes. So again, I have this facade. I'm lying. He moves in with me. Things get worse, of course. He's addicted to drugs. My dad's on drugs. At this point, my mom's not doing well. She's in her own bad relationship. My brother's on methamphetamine. Everybody in my life is loaded. My grandma's high. She's always high, but everybody in my life was on drugs.
Right.
So I'm codependent. I'm trying to fix all these people. I've got my hands in everything. I'm trying to go to school. I went to school. He would follow me to the class, wait outside, walk me back. We had one phone.
The boyfriend.
Yes, we shared a phone. We never left each other's side.
So he wanted to have full control.
Full control. There was no me without him.
But he was doing his own thing, obviously, at least based on what you were saying earlier.
So once we moved to Venice together, that's when prior to that, he would do his own thing.
Okay.
Because I lived with my family. For the majority of the day, I'm grounded, so I'm home. The only time I can really hang out with him is like past 10 p.m. or when we finally came out with it. My mom would allow like 1 hour of boyfriend time. She's very strict.
Right.
But then once they kind of unraveled.
This is after you're 18, you're an adult, you're living out there.
I moved to Venice when I was 17. I graduated a little early, moved to Venice. There wasn't a big plan. It was just, there I am. Like in Venice Beach, super nice house. I had a nice brand new car, all the things, they took care of me. My dad took really good care of me, especially based on the guilt he was feeling about, So he overcompensated with financial stuff. I'm looking at it now. The abuse just continues. I'm running down the street, crying, screaming, trying to get away from him, pulling my hair. Next day, love, cuddles, I love you, I'm sorry. And I was addicted to that cycle of abuse and then love, and then abuse and then love. Meanwhile, my dad's not doing well. I'm going up there and visiting him, it's a 3.5 hour drive. I go up there, I see him. I'm witnessing him very intoxicated. There was times where he'd be overdosed at the house. I shouldn't have seen that, At the time, I was like, I need to fix this, though. I need to get my boyfriend sober, because he'd be sober for a lot of times, and he'd get drunk, go crazy. I knew he was trying. My dad, I knew he was trying. My mom, I knew she was trying, but they were all so sick, and I was so sick.
Right.
But if you would have asked me if I'm okay, yes, I'm great. I'm doing so good. So it's all a big facade. And then they started to catch on to the abuse, because one day I ran out of gas. We were stranded in the middle of the desert. It's hot. I have my shirt, I would wear long sleeves. I wasn't wearing a long sleeve. Bruises all up on me, handprints. And my dad just flipped. And he lost his mind. He figured my ex, he jumped through the window. My dad's like, I'm gonna fucking kill this guy, right? It kind of comes out, but then he was so high that kind of got brushed under the rug. Everybody was fine with him again, because there was nothing he could do. He was very sick. So then we're there for a while. We live in Venice. It's back and forth. What finally got me out of the really unhealthy place we were in the relationship was I got a job. He'd go to jail for 6 months. He went to jail for domestic violence on me. He was there for a long time. He went to jail for drug trafficking, was there for a long time. So I'd have minutes and moments of freedom. Right. Freedom from my mom, freedom from him.
Where you could focus on yourself,
I would do me. And I got a little job I swear that job saved my life. I learned how to be somewhere at a certain time, leave at a certain time. I grew independence about myself. I was doing great in art school. And then he'd come back and
kind of sabotage.
Yeah, but while he was gone, I would do crazy stuff too, act out. I was not right in the head. I was depressed. I was anxious. I was miserable. I wanted to die, especially when he was gone, I would really spiral.
You couldn't feel whatever that void was inside.
But one of those last times I got the job, and I met friends, and it really helped.
Started building a circle.
And then he would leave, he'd leave me, this was very tumultuous. It's hard to really.
Just a huge roller coaster ride, right? It was one of those things where you keep jumping on and jumping off, right? And then, for whatever reason you felt trapped, and you couldn't remove yourself from the situation permanently, right? So let's kind of fast forward to what made you want, because obviously that's the backstory, right? But at what point did you start saying, look, I want to actually get out of this, make a commitment to yourself that you're going to get out of this? And what did you actually do to remove yourself from that situation?
That's a good question. Yeah, so a lot how an alcoholic or addict will try to get sober a bunch and they'll do well, and then that was me. I did little things to get better. I joined the gym. I went to Gold's Gym in Venice, and I got a personal trainer, and he taught me how to sit up straight, and not be so have such low confidence. I got the job, which was huge. A lot of women in relationships with narcissistic men aren't working, and they're just in that house all day. So I was working. I met friends. I did open up to people about what was going on, and I would get moments of clarity. I had a big moment of clarity later, but I had a lot of little moments of clarity as I went. And what really was the the nail in the coffin was I got roommates and I built a life, and they wouldn't let him come over, you know?
Right.
Like,
They don't
I
want
had
him
an
around.
army behind me that I didn't make. God made that army. Someone did, right?
Wow.
Where people didn't let that happen anymore, because I started working in treatment, which, you know, that's jumping ahead a little bit, but those people, they saw exactly what was going on.
Right.
And there was an army behind me, and
Right.
he broke down our door at our house and my roommates were just like, this can't happen. So it slowly stopped happening, and it wasn't some clean, like, aha moment, break, like, I'm gonna get out of this, because I wasn't a victim of the situation. I was a volunteer. I had any opportunity to leave. No one was making me do those things. So once I built a relationship with myself and focused on those self-esteem issues, focused on my, you know, body dysmorphia, got on medication for my anxiety and my depression, went to the gym, I didn't want it anymore. But it was slow. It wasn't an overnight pill. It wasn't like I read a book and it opened my eyes.
Right.
It was
gradual.
It was truly
It was
gradual, and
An uphill battle.
it took an army of people.
An army of people.
It
yeah.
really did. It took
You
a
couldn't
lot
do
of
it by
people.
yourself.
No, and you know, I experienced happiness and I experienced freedom once I was out of that.
When you say, because right now you're saying, hey, I was not a victim, I was a volunteer. I think that's a big statement. I'm wondering if that's how you felt at that time versus that's how you feel now as somebody who understands, you know, as a counselor and who is helping people and also kind of understands the technical, you know, modalities. Now you're looking back and kind of relabeling it. But when you were in the moment, how did you feel about it? Did you feel like a victim? Did you feel like a volunteer? Did you not think about how to label it and you were just like, how did you experience it, you know?
I think I was so overwhelmed with trying to hide it and trying to continue to be with this person and experience this life with this person that I did feel like a victim at times. Like when it would be those, like, you know, in the shower right after you just, you know, you're in pain, your body hurts, you know, something bad has just happened to you, and I'd go, what the fuck is this? Like, this is not normal. My other friends are not dealing with this. Like,
Right.
he's a bad person. And I would feel victimized at times. Other times I felt like my pure job was to hide the situation because I loved him and because there were so many good times. And so it was a mix between when something would happen, victim, and then I just need to, like, hide this, and
Right.
I don't want to talk to anybody
And
about
I think
this.
it's a combination. I mean, you were definitely a victim of the abuse, right? Like that's not something that you volunteered for. But I see what you're saying, which is like, I also stayed in the relationship, and sure, it was
Lived with
because of
me. I
it was
took
because
care
of
of
the
him.
addictions,
Yeah.
and I mean, there's a reason why you were there. You weren't thinking clearly. You were dealing with mental health, eating disorders, all these different kind of issues that compromised your ability to think clearly and make the right decision and the best decision for yourself, which is what people from the outside could see.
Yeah.
But then you could not see that because you were clouded by all this other stuff going on inside of you, right? And so, you know, I think that's a critical point where there's such a disconnect between when somebody's going through something, what other people perceive
Yeah.
versus what that person's perceiving. And then down the road, now that you did get help and you did kind of find a way to persevere and get out of that situation, you look back and you're kind of reflecting.
Yeah.
And you're saying, okay, well, you know, I obviously was part of that problem.
Yeah. 100%.
But also you were, you know, somebody was doing that to you.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a combination of that. But yeah, to completely say you're a victim and just not take any
Yeah.
accountability does not help you move
I'll do
forward.
it again.
Exactly.
I'll do it again.
Right. And I think that's
I had
important.
to take my power back and say, nothing I did, I have control over my life. I do not have to be in a relationship like this again because I'm not going to let that happen. But if I'm a
Right.
victim and if it just happens to me, I'll continue. There'll be 10 others. And that's what happens to a lot of women. One abusive relationship after another abusive relationship. All different names, but the same characteristics, same problems, same symptoms over and over. And so I do think that I took my power back and I said, you know, nothing happened to me. I was not well. And as a result, the symptom of my unwellness was I wanted to feel worse. I wanted
Right.
to be in pain.
Right.
I wanted to sit in my shit, you know, and
That was
And-
giving you some form of weird gratification.
It's self-harm. It's
Yeah.
like, it's another way of self-harming. It's like, I don't want a good life. If you gave it to me, I wouldn't receive it. I didn't want it. Which is interesting now looking back, because I'm so motivated, I'm so driven,
Right.
and it's I don't know that girl
Now
right
you're
now.
so focused on your personal journey and how to better yourself and, you know, how
it's
to
a
move forward.
miracle
Yeah.
that I'm even...
It's a completely different person, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's all that you've been through, that journey and that struggle that enables you to help so many people, whether it's the actual clients dealing with addiction or mental health disorders or even eating disorders. And I know you really do well with females.
I
you know,
do.
that's kind of your strength.
That's what I do,
But also, you know, and I think something we want to talk about a little bit today is, you know, somebody who maybe talking to the families out there who are maybe not addicts or alcoholics themselves, but have family members, whether it's their kids or their husbands or wives, or, you know, anyone in their family or close circle who are dealing with addiction, or are dealing with these, you know, eating disorder, mental health issues. I think these are all interconnected in some way. And ultimately, I'd like you to give them some perspective of, you know, what can they do to either identify, maybe if they're, like in your case, you were so good at hiding it. Are there some hints that you can give them of how they could potentially identify if their daughter is going through something like that? And then talking to the girls out there, you know, whether they're teens or even young adults, you know, that are going through it. I mean, just listening to your story, I'm sure is motivational, but, you know, how can you try to penetrate that wall? Because there's so much there's such a big wall that they put in front of themselves. Like you said, you didn't want to get help. So like, how can you help somebody who doesn't want to get help? And is it even possible?
That's the $1 million question.
Right? That's the $1 million question. But I think just talking to the families, because I think sometimes the families don't know because they don't want to know, because the truth is painful. And sometimes it's just, you know, somebody like Taryn who's really good at manipulating and hiding, and gets won by them. But eventually, like, everyone gets exposed, right? I think that's one truth that we want to put out there is no matter how good you are at lying or deceiving or hiding what you're going through, the truth will eventually come out. And then it's going to be even more destructive, right?
Very much so.
And so what can you do to prevent that? Based on what you've went through and what you've kind of helped and coach other people, can you give us some tools that we could use out there who, you know, whether they're going through it themselves or if it's a family member specifically?
So the biggest tool that I tell the families all the time and other people is don't judge what they're doing and meet them where they're at. Because if you come from a place of judgment or why are you doing this and how could you do this, I will immediately crawl right back into my shell and I will become very defensive, very angry that you're even trying to change me. So what I do with young women who come in and I'm getting the phone calls from the boyfriend and I'm watching her unravel and I don't try to ask her why she's in it. I don't try to fix it. I don't try to, get her out. What I do is I just sit with her and I hold space. And what that means could just be that I listen or that I tell my experience, but I hold space for people and I make them feel safe to tell me what's going on without me calling their parents on them or exposing them, but just to tell one other woman, like, yes, this is what's happening, is really impactful. So if you can just be as just try not to give too much, you should do this and should do that and really beat it down their throat, which a lot of us do. We go, oh, if you just knew this, and this, I'll fix you. It's not helpful. It shames us and we feel shame. And I already feel shame. I don't want to feel like you're judging me now. So I'd say just non-judgment and love and just really meet them exactly where they're at and go, okay, so he just yelled at you on the phone. Like, how are you feeling? Like, not he shouldn't have yelled at you, but because chances are she's not going to get out of that relationship because you tell her to. So it's
she's
really,
going to have to get through it in some ways herself.
That's herself. That's not on you. As a family member, you cannot change anything that no matter what you say, don't say, give money, don't give money. You have no control. I had no control over my family when they were using. I thought I did. I was like trying to fix and, alongside this relationship, I was also dealing with all my family in addiction. I was that parent, that daughter going like, oh, can you please fix him? You know, change this, change
Right.
that. Maybe a
So
medication.
you had both roles, you know?
Yeah, like a medication
Yeah.
will fix it, and I'd go over there and do the favors for them because I didn't want to upset them. Because what if I upset them and they did
Right.
too much drugs and then they
Right.
died?
Right.
Like,
You don't want to have the shame and guilt.
It's horrible what these family members have to deal with.
Right.
They're afraid if they make one wrong move, their kid's gonna die.
Right.
And that's how I felt my whole life, was dealing with these addicts. And then my dad does die. So what does that do for me after that? I go down a
Oh my
freaking.
God. Yeah.
I went because
What did he die from, an overdose? Or
yeah.
Was it,
So right after, when I was living in Venice, I moved in with him to get out of the relationship in Costa Mesa, and then he was sober.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, I'm going to get away from this woman who was like getting him high. He met this chick, and she was
Mm-hmm.
horrible to him, and they got loaded together, and he's like, I'm going to do it. He went to Pat Moore, and then he cleaned up and got this house. We all kind of lived in, and it was a sober house,
Mm-hmm.
and I needed somewhere to go because I was getting out of that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But I found needles. I found paraphernalia. He was acting intoxicated. He was clearly high on meth some days. So I'm not doing good at this point at all. He moves back to the mountains. I get a job in treatment. I said to my mom, I don't want to work with men anymore. A lot of bad things happened to me as a result of men after I got out of that relationship, because I was very susceptible to that at that time, because I was very lonely. And so I worked in an all-women's treatment center.
Right.
I never had to see another man again. And I didn't for a long time.
Right.
I just got out of that.
That was healthy. That was healthy for you.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was amazing. And, oh, God, it was great. But about 6 months into me working in treatment, I'm 22 years old, and I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. You know, I'm a tech. My mom
Right.
said, no
Just
special
starting out.
treatment.
Yeah.
You're going to be an overnight tech, and you're going to work PMs on the weekends. Like, just because you're my daughter, no special treatment. So anyways, I'm doing that. I get a call that my dad has died. But I hadn't been in contact with him for a whole month. We talked every day, and he would tell me he's suicidal. And he would tell me, if I don't have you, I have no one. And I was one of the only ones still talking to him at this point, because he was on fentanyl and sedatives and alcohol and, you know, everything you could possibly put into your body. And we didn't recognize him. He was a different person. He wasn't my dad anymore, but I still had a relationship with him. I was very codependent to that relationship. I was told I should break off that relationship because on Father's Day, we had a planned date. We were going to do some fun stuff. I was excited to see him. I figured he'd come. We'd have a good time. He's just completely knotted out in my kitchen. It's just me and him. And I have a panic attack. I'm just like, what do I do? Like, I'm afraid that, like, I'm angry. I was afraid. I was like, what am I going to do? So I told him he had to leave my house. And I blocked him. I blocked my father, you know. That was the final straw for me, because he was talking crap on everyone. He was, like, belligerent. He was angry. He was calling me names. There had been other events where
He wasn't himself.
There was other events where he'd called me names, and a lot of stuff had happened, a lot of abuse from him. He had me selling weed, weird stuff that, like, I shouldn't have been doing. So there was all this trauma from him. And I'm working in treatment, and it's been a month since I've talked to him, blocked him, and then I go to the fair with this is crazy, the guy, the same guy, the 10-year guy that I was with. I somehow shack back up with him. I'm stupid. Go to the fair with him. I come home, and my mom's like, your dad's dead. And she just says it like that. And I'm like, and I was like, but this person who, in my eyes, is immortal, is like my hero, my favorite person in the world. I knew he was going to get sober and he was going to get out of it. I knew he was going to get better. I never would have thought that I wouldn't have a dad. Like, that wasn't even in a question. And I'm like, what do you mean he's got, like, so I start, like, punching the floor. I'm screaming. I'm like, this is my fault. I killed him. He told me if I stopped talking to him, he was going to die. And, like, it was an overdose, but it was planned. So this is fucking crazy. He got married like 2 days before to that crazy lady. And he put himself on hospice, and the toxicology report was crazy. It, like, 5 times the lethal dose of sedatives, morphine, fentanyl, everything you could ever have. He wanted to die. And he did. And I just didn't know what to do with myself. I still don't know what, like, it's crazy to me that he's gone. And so
then I realized I'm doing this forever. Like, I need to fix this problem. Like, no one should have to deal with this.
Right.
Like, all these people get these calls, like, our kid is dead. Like, he went to rehab to get sober and he overdosed and he died. Like, it's just so tragic. And I put my heart into it after that. I was like, I felt so much shame and guilt that he died. And I just wanted to help people. I was like, I have to help people. And so the worst thing that could have ever happened to me, and I survived it. And I was like, I jumped into service work after that. Like, I ended that relationship with the guy. I'm doing my like eulogy at his funeral, and I'm like, this isn't real. Like,
You just can't believe what's going on. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm crying.
No. I mean, it's just, it's one of those things where you can't. Like, it's surreal.
It's completely.
It's surreal.
I don't remember it. It's almost like I was completely dissociated, and like I was up here watching myself at my dad's funeral. I have no way of getting his body. The woman has taken his body. I don't have a t-shirt. She's taken everything.
Right.
She's like selling all the properties. He put a will and testament for 2 days
Last
before
minute,
to give it all to her. So we can't even have his remains. Like, nothing.
She's completely manipulated the situation, undue influence. I mean,
that's
all
what
kinds
it
of
was.
things happen.
So we had to go to court. So ultimately, I'm in court. I'm 22 years old. My dad's dead. He put everything to me. So before it was her, all of his money went to me.
Right.
So I had to do the court case. So I had to sit up on the stand, look her in the eye.
After dealing with all this.
Yes, I had to look her in the eye, and I had to testify. And her case was, he didn't love you. You guys didn't have a good relationship.
Right.
My case was undue influence. He was intoxicated when he did that. But it was so much money, and it was so much time, and we were up there every week in Bakersfield, and I had to do all the talking.
Another painful experience, just another traumatic experience.
It was traumatic. The worst thing that ever happened to me was I was up there on the stand on trial, and they give the evidence, and the evidence is all the messages my dad sent me when I was blocked. And
Jesus.
It was like, I miss you, I love you, please call me. And I'm like I'm 22, like, I can't deal with this. But it wasn't him, and I can't blame myself, but I did it's been 7 years now, and I'd say for the first 3, I completely blamed myself. So when I talk to a family member, like, I put myself fully in their shoes. And when a client, like, runs away, like, I chase them, because that's someone's son, like, it's someone's dad.
You don't want to give up.
I don't give up on people because, like, I always wish, like, someone would have went up there and, like, done something, or, like, someone in the treatment center should have made him stay, like, like, he wasn't ready to come home.
Right. But I mean, that's the biggest challenge, though. I mean, Taryn, you know this better than anyone. Is
I know.
Both being in the space of treating people and also having gone through it is.
Yeah.
And there's no way you can get over that feeling, right?
Yeah.
In terms of, people say time will heal.
Yeah.
Or, you can't get over it. Like, it's not something that you can get over, but also you have to be able to deal with it and cope with it and live your life, right? You can't allow it to take over your life. But I mean, you just explained so many traumatic experiences from your teen years to now you're a young adult. You have your shit together, but all of a sudden, you're this whole thing, and you're thinking, well, I'm blocking him because he needs to get better, and if I just keep, feeding into the codependency and enabling, so you're making the right decision, but then now it's being used against you in a court of law in order for somebody else that just met the person and to get financial gain. And so now you're going through that, and it's just a never-ending cycle for you, right?
And you're like, pay her. We gave her a lot of money,
right? Just
houses,
to make it go away.
Money. Yeah, we couldn't, because we were like, okay, we could do a criminal investigation, we could do all these things, but like, we were broken as a family. Like, we lost he was the glue. My father was the glue that held the family together. That's gone. We don't want to be in court every day for the next.
That's another 3 to 5 year battle.
That's what the lawyers said, and we were like, you know what? Like, take all of his stuff. Take his. We would have liked the remains or something, but.
Well, it's that combination of like the personal, right? Like the remains and just being able to have the body and spend the time.
T-shirt, something.
Versus the assets and all that. And it's like, look, we can.
That.
What was more important was just a peace of mind to just move forward.
Yeah.
Rather than being in another 5 years of turmoil. And it's just never ending. It's like, okay, let's say you win, but you really lose. Like,
You
in a lot
lost
of
money.
you lose
It's-
yourself. You
Yeah.
know?
Money, yourself, everything. So yeah, it was not worth pursuing, but like that was really the aha moment for me of working in treatment.
So that propelled you to kind of double down and say, hey,
Double down.
this isn't just like a temporary gig. This is going to be my career, and this is kind of my calling.
Yeah.
You know, I want to help families, and I want to help other people like me. So that, you know, and now you've been doing it. How long have you been doing it since?
Since 2016.
Okay.
So what's that, like 7
About
years?
almost 8 years now.
years
Yeah.
now. Yeah. And it really, working in treatment is the best thing I ever did for myself.
Yeah.
Truly. I mean, it gave me self-esteem. I'm good at it. I always wanted to be good at something, you know, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And that scared little girl, like, went away, and I, like, emerged as this, like, very, like, sure of herself
Right.
person. And I think all the esteemable acts I do is builds my self-esteem. Every person I help, it helps me in turn, and I feel a purpose. And I don't think I had a purpose for a long time. And having a purpose and knowing why I have that purpose and reminding myself is super important. And my brother got sober shortly after my dad's passing. That was a miracle. We never thought he was going to get sober, you know. I walked him through his first, like, 90 days sobriety and all
Nice.
that. So I've seen the miracles too. So alongside the deaths and the calls and the, you know, this person didn't make it, you also see these, like, beautiful success stories, and that's a rush for me. It's more than enough to fulfill me, is to see somebody call me and go, oh, I'm getting married. You know, I have 5 years sober, and, you know, I want to invite you to the wedding. And I'm like,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So for me, yeah, working
all those
in-
letters and all the kind of testimonials you get from other people that you've actually helped,
I
like,
know.
feeds you, and that's the
Yeah.
positive feed that you need. That's why being of service is so important.
Yeah.
Because you're being fed by positivity rather than negativity, right?
Yeah, super important.
You know, that's such a fascinating story, and I didn't know a lot of that, right? And
Yeah.
it's just, I've known you for a little over a year now, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, the things that we all go through, and, you know, nobody notices because everyone just sees the face you put forward.
Yeah.
Right. But behind the scenes and inside the head, there's so much going on. And I think, you know, you've been such a champion as far as getting yourself through that multiple years of trauma, whether it's, you know, and it's from these people who you're really vulnerable to,
Yeah.
you know, and I think that's the sad part, is just you're completely vulnerable, and then you're being taken advantage of. Whether it's intentional or unintentional, that doesn't really matter. It's happening, right? And
Yeah.
so, but I think you know, I can see your passion now, and I see how you're using that as a tool to help others and kind of find purpose. And I think that's what you need to hold on to, because I
Yeah.
mean, there's always going to be temptation, and there's always going to be self-doubt.
Yeah.
And I think it's just in those moments you need to really sit down and reflect on where you've been and how far you've come, and
Yeah.
not throw that all away over, you know. So I think it's just that no giving up, just never giving up attitude. And then really just being of service. I think
Yeah.
that's, for you specifically, it's such a tool that has helped you. And
has.
you know, I really kind of feel like we went over so much that people can, just from watching you and kind of almost living your story through, you know, living through your story, there's a lot of people going through similar things,
yes,
right? Maybe
now.
not all at the same time, right? Because I mean, you went through a lot at the same time, but you know, it might be an abusive domestic violent relationship. It might be a death of a parent. It might be a family member dealing with addiction, right? And so I think those are things that maybe in another interview we can explore more and go into more specifics about, well, what is codependency? What is body dysmorphia? What are these symptoms and what are these disorders that kind of created this void and created this need for this negative energy? And then what's love addiction? I mean, I think there's so much more to discuss.
Yeah.
And I think we should do a second round, kind of a part 2, where we dig a little bit deeper into each specific issue. And then it'll be more of like, hey, you know, what is this? And then we can give the audience your perspective of not only what those were in general from your learnings and from you as a counselor, and then maybe a little bit highlighting on your story again, as far as what tools would you use to help overcome those obstacles, right?
Yeah.
So I'd love to have you back on the show, and
Yeah.
we can dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah. I
All
love
right.
that. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Taryn.
Of course.
I had a pleasure having you on the show.
It was nice.
So for this episode of Ocean Rock Stars, it was really, in my eyes, it was a really eye-opening interview with Taryn. I know there's so many people out there that are struggling, whether it's mental health, addiction, eating disorders, anxiety. There's just so many young people dealing with anxiety, not knowing how to handle that. And so I think by watching and listening, there's always somebody going through a similar experience. There's always somebody who might be going through it, times 10. But it doesn't matter kind of what the context is, right? It's just deep down inside, you're going through that. That's the most important thing that you're going through, right? You can't compare, well, this person's pain is greater than this other person, or look at my life, it's worse than yours, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think ultimately what I learned today that I took away from this was Taryn's ability to keep herself accountable and not just, kind of getting past the victimization stage, acknowledging that you are a victim, but then holding yourself accountable and saying, well, what can I do to get myself through this? And I think one of the biggest takeaways for me, Taryn, was just when you said you had to build an army to help you, because it is so difficult to get through this by yourself. I mean, I would say almost impossible.
Yeah.
But if you have the right people around you, which means that you need to take that first step of opening up and at least sharing it with one person, right? And so it's that ability to get out of your head, to get out of yourself, share with one person, but that person being somebody who's in a position to help, right? It's not the abusive person.
Yeah.
It's maybe a counselor, and you don't have to go to long-term therapy. It's just finding one person, whether it's just one group, one person that is in this, who's had a similar experience or who's in the field to help. But then start there, and then you can build your army, because ultimately the more people you have that you can share with, and the more people that you have that understand what you're going through and have been there, whether they've been there themselves or who have the educational background and understand how these disorders work. There could be a doctor, a psychologist, marriage and family therapist, certified addiction counselor like yourself. There are people out there who want to help. And I think ultimately Taryn is such a good example of somebody who shut everybody out and had to go through so many years of pain and suffering, versus if you can take that first step and reach out and allow people to help you, then you can build that army earlier, and you can hopefully get out of that situation without as much destruction. Thanks again, Taryn. It was a pleasure to have you.
Yeah.